October 1996. Princess Diana, fondly known as the Queen of Hearts, sits down at her writing table and nervously turns on the lamp. She picks up her ballpoint pen, takes a deep breath, and starts writing. The words she scribbles in the next few minutes will one day shock the world, for she's about to detail her impending death. 10 months later, what she wrote came true. We'll come back to that letter soon, but first, for those of you not familiar with Princess Diana, here's an abridged version of her short life. Just enough information to give you an idea of why this woman thought her own family was plotting to kill her and make it all look like an accident. She was born on July 1, 1961, Diana Frances Spencer. Her family was no ordinary family. They were part of the rarefied upper echelons of Britain's extremely posh elite. When her pop became an earl, she became Lady Diana Spencer. She would later be called the Princess of Hearts and the People's Princess by the fawning media and the dwindling number of people left in the UK who were still proud of their royal family. She grew up among British nobility, playing with boys who were princes and hanging out with girls at finishing schools who all learned to keep a straight back and speak with a queenly elocution. Silver spoons abound. This was no normal British life. Diana was about as familiar with the lives of the British working class as she was with the microorganisms that lived on her $3,000 pillowcase. Still, even with all the obscene luxury and exclusive formalities that she lived with, there was a rebellious streak in her. One day in 1980, she watched a certain young man play polo. This was Prince Charles, not a big fan of the much superior sport of darts. Soon after, they went out on the royal yacht together, and it wasn't long until she met his parents at the royals' home from home, Balmoral Castle. Over a year later, around 750 million people watched on TV what was called a fairy tale wedding. Hundreds of thousands of clamoring Brits hugged the street as the two rode by in a horse-drawn carriage. It might have looked like a fairy tale, but if you've ever read the originals, they're often rather violent and twisted. Notably, during the ceremony, she did not utter the word obey during the vows. To hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer, poorer, in sickness and in health, to love, cherish, till death do us part. But they decided together to omit the obey part. So it was a match made in heaven. A pretty princess with an adorable smile had met her Prince Charming, but in a few years she'll describe this heaven as hell. We're not going to get into everything. We have no bedroom secrets for you, but after love-making, missionary style no doubt, 2 children were produced, William and the novelty prince for Americans, Harry. The thing was, Diana wanted to do things her own way. You see, the royals have protocols. You don't just bring up your kids any way you want, but she did. They were her kids after all. Diana couldn't quite grasp that being a royal meant being imprisoned. She became a bit of a thorn in the royal family's side, but to the public she was an independent woman sticking it to the toffs. Charles then started seeing his ex-lover, Camilla Parker Bowles. It seemed like his blue-blooded younger brother Andrew, Charlie, might have had quite a few affairs behind his pretty wife's back. The relationship was falling apart. The media got hold of information that exposed Charles's affair, while Diana was being applauded for bringing awareness to things such as HIV, animal rights, homelessness, and drug addiction. The rest of the family were left looking like ridiculously privileged artifacts from a time in the past. She was showing them up for what they really were, outdated snobs. Then Diana admitted she felt depressed. She said she felt unstable, and she let it be known that she was the black sheep of the royal family. What you have to understand is that the royals had never talked like this before. What happened in the palace stayed in the palace. Royal propaganda demands that the public see the royals as beacons of infallibility. For millennia, kings and queens around the world have had to look immaculate, almost godly. They are the embodiment of the divine, so the script goes. They aren't supposed to hit the bottle, talk about futility, fart in front of the royal dog, or argue about pubic hairs on the soap. Diana was keeping things a bit too real. This was really problematic for the rest of the unreal family. It's one of the reasons why Harry plays being human these days. Diana's honesty forced an evolution. She went on TV and talked about Charles and his relentless cheating. She talked about how low she felt, admitting that on occasion she purposefully hurt herself. Enough was enough. The Queen then told the pair they had to divorce. This loose-lipped woman had to go before the House of Cards came tumbling down. Diana, now dropping more bombshells than the American military in Laos, said Charles had impregnated his personal assistant, Tiggy Leg Burke, and she had aborted the baby. Suffice to say, it wasn't anything close to an amicable breakup. Diana's head would have been on the chopping block and her children imprisoned in a dungeon a few centuries earlier. The concern for the family now was, once she's single, what is she gonna say to the press? Let's remind ourselves that the royal family very likely harbors many dark secrets. Prince Andrew or Lord Mountbatten are outstanding outstanding examples, but we won't get into that today. That's why when Diana died, many people thought the Queen of Hearts had been taken care of, in the mafia sense of the expression. August 31st, 1997. The British look at the TV and see the headline, "Paris car accident, Princess Diana seriously hurt." No one knows exactly how it happened because her car crashed inside the Pont de la Ma tunnel in Paris. Her partner, Dodi Fayed, also died. He was the scion to a family fortune made by his billionaire father, Mohammed Al Fayed. The driver of the car also died. Mohammed Al Fayed always said he thinks his son and Diana were murdered in a conspiracy cooked up by MI6 and the royal family. If you don't know what MI6 is, think James Bond. It's part of the British Secret Intelligence Service. So, how did the car crash happen? This part is very important, especially when you hear what she wrote in that letter. At 4:30 p.m. that day, Diana and Dodi entered a hotel owned by Dodi's father, the Ritz Paris. Sometime later, Dodi bought a couple of expensive rings from a jewelry store. Around 10 p.m., the two headed off to a swanky restaurant. You should also know that they were hounded all the time by those cockroaches, also known as the paparazzi. Diana ordered the Dover sole, some vegetables tempura, and a mushroom and asparagus omelet. She could have had no idea that this was to be her last meal. The two started eating, but then after thinking some of the other diners were looking at them too much and were actually paparazzi, they took the food to their hotel room. Just before 12:30 a.m., they decided to head off to Dodi's apartment. They got the driver, Henri Paul, and took off in the Mercedes. He'd had a couple of hits of booze himself and was on Prozac, although Prozac isn't really known for making a person high. Still, he was driving a bit recklessly because he was trying to lose the paparazzi. He lost control of the car in the tunnel, hit a pillar, and the two men died instantly. The Queen of Hearts spilled a lot of blood, and while she was cut out of the wreckage, she died soon in the hospital. The medical report would say Diana's body arrived in a condition of serious hemorrhage and shock. An urgent surgery showed a severe wound to the left pulmonary vein. Despite the closure of this wound and the 2-hour external and internal cardiac massage, no official respiratory circulation could be established. There was another guy in the car, though. His name was Trevor Rees-Jones, and he was the couple's bodyguard. His face was pretty much flattened in the accident, and many of his bones broke. Like Humpty Dumpty, he was put back together again, but it took many surgeries. He later said he didn't believe there was any conspiracy to kill Diana, although Dodi's father didn't believe him. After all, the bodyguard had served in the British military before. The father believed this guy was in the employ of the Secret Service. It was a dark day in Britain, even for a country that suffers interminably horrible weather. The country mourned, the paparazzi was despised, and then things began to calm down, and the British again got used to being just mildly depressed all year round. But then the media started bringing the tragic event up again. Turned out that some news media was originally told that Diana had just been a bit bashed up after the crash, but was in no way in mortal danger. In fact, a Sky News anchor later said, "I got a call saying Dodi was dead, Diana was fine, but they thought she'd probably broken her leg." The cops had to investigate this. Remember, what happened in that tunnel stayed in that tunnel. No one has ever seen how Diana died. Even the bodyguard doesn't really know what happened, since after the accident he looked like he'd been sucker punched by a transformer. Dodi's father said Diana was pregnant with his son's baby. He also said the British royals could not accept that an Egyptian Muslim could eventually be the stepfather of the future King of England. Was she pregnant? Medical tests didn't point to that, but if she was that badly bashed up, word on the street is tests wouldn't have been able to detect latent pregnancy. Her body was also embalmed very quickly, which was kind of strange. The hospital said it was hot, and that's why they did it. Did Diana even think that the royals were so demented in their ways that they'd be capable of taking out their perceived enemies Game of Thrones style? The answer is yes, she did. After one of her former bodyguards died in a motorcycle accident, she admitted to having loved the man. She also said it was all found out and he was chucked out of royal protection. Then he was killed. I think he was bumped off. British intelligence, like the CIA, can bump people off, start wars, do all kinds of dark things at their secret black sites. A murder meant to look like an accident could well be in the learning purview of MI6. After all, its members have a license to kill. Nonetheless, MI6 has said in the past that it isn't involved in assassinations, although according to an article in the BBC, operatives have been trained to kill people from time to time. This is from a memo relating to something called Operation Anthropoid. The two agents concerned have been trained in all methods of assassination known to us. They intend to carry out this operation whether or not there is any opportunity of subsequent escape. If the enemy is great enough, there's no doubt Secret Service guys might consider making use of the license to kill. But taking out the Queen of Hearts, that seems outrageous. MI6 shapes the minds of the public. It goes after dictators and terrorists. It even gets down with a bit of torture. But killing a princess? demise. That sounds like something cooked up on Reddit by a poster whose education part of his resume consists of the words Reddit and 4chan. Still, this theory doesn't seem so outlandish when you hear that former MI6 officer Richard Tomlinson believes Diana was taken out by the guys he used to work for. He said that British intelligence was planning to use strobe lights to blind the driver and cause the crash. He said this kind of thing had been taught in training. He became part of an investigation, and that investigation said it could find no evidence that what Tomlinson said was true. But then there was the former butler of Diana, Paul Burrell. It's this guy that she wrote to about her impending death at the hands of the family that had more or less disowned her. The letter starts, "I'm sitting here at my desk today in October, longing for someone to hug me and encourage me to keep strong and hold my head high." It also said this, "The bit that's caused somewhat of a hurricane. This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure, or some serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry. Camilla is nothing more than a decoy, so we're being used by the man in every sense of the word." Remember, Tiggy was the assistant of Charles, whom Diana believed had aborted a child. Often, you have to take what you read in the British tabloid media with a pinch of salt, but from what we can see, that letter was genuine. More serious journalists have said as much. However, Burrell had held it back for years and didn't produce it during the inquiry into Diana's death. Here's how she finished the letter. "I have been battered, bruised, and abused mentally by a system for 15 years now, but I feel no resentment. I'm strong inside, and maybe that's a problem for my enemies. Thank you, Charles, for putting me through such hell and for giving me the opportunity to learn from the cruel things you've done to me." It didn't come as a shock that Dodi's father was somewhat upset by this letter having been hidden for so many years. Diana wrote exactly what he said had happened. Remember, this man was a billionaire too. He likely had some clout himself when it came to investigating the matter. He wrote his own statement soon after he saw the letter. It went, "I am disappointed that it has taken Burrell 6 years to reveal this extraordinary correspondence, and it raises questions as to what other secrets he may be harboring." In what must now be seen as a cynical attempt to silence him, Paul Burrell was prosecuted in the criminal courts, but this bungled move has simply served to highlight the involvement of the royal household in the strange circumstances surrounding Diana's death. He believed that the investigation itself was a sham, that someone high up had laid a heavy hand on the British police. He was quite aware that the heaviest hands in the entire country were the British royal family and the intelligence services. In a book he wrote, Burrell said Diana talked to him about how she felt hounded by the family and how they were trying to discredit her any way they could. He said one day she invited him around to her place, and they spent the day moving furniture and pulling up carpets in an attempt to find MI6 bugs. You have to ask, was Diana suffering from paranoia? She would have been right to worry, seeing as the tabloid media followed her everywhere and her phone had been tapped in the past. This led to something called Squidgy-gate, but we won't get into that today. All you need to know is she definitely was being spied on. Maybe this and her terrible marriage caused the overwhelming depression. That could certainly result in paranoia, even though it's very possible to assume people were just out to get her. As writer Joseph Heller and later singer Kurt Cobain said, just because you're paranoid, it doesn't mean they're not after you. What's so darn strange about her letter, though, is that she did die in a car. Maybe the brakes had failed. Maybe the accident was set up. The letter might just also be the rantings of a sick woman who, by an unbelievable coincidence, spelled out how she would die. Even if you're the most reasonable thinker, you can't help but wonder how such a coincidence could happen. We all know that some conspiracy theorists can sit all day in their computers joining vague dots together in self-constructed jigsaw clouds that don't ever reveal a full picture, but who could blame the Diana murder theorists for getting excited when they finally saw that letter? It's just a pity that on the day, the 14 CCTV cameras in that tunnel weren't quite facing in the direction of the crash. Those darn cameras always seem to be faulty or not working when they're needed the most, especially when British royals or their friends are involved. Maybe in the future another piece will be added to the puzzle, but don't hold out hope. There's as much a chance of seeing the Queen unzipping her lizard suit the next time she delivers an annual royal Christmas message. Now you need to watch The Crazy True Story of the Man Who Killed JFK, or have a look at Did OJ Commit Those Murders?